Norfolk is known for its beauty, tranquility, and its rich history. But hidden underneath is an issue that is not being talked about enough. In just 1 year, 77 people in Norfolk will choose to take their own lives, and 76% of these deaths are men.
I've kind of been thinking on and off about kind of how dark things have got, and there's kind of thoughts of I didn't really want to be here anymore.
The number of deaths by suicide in Norfolk not only contributes to what is a national crisis, with an average of 6,000 people taking their own lives every year in the UK, but it surpasses the national average. Suicide is now the biggest killer of men in Norfolk between the ages of 20 and 49.
That night was the worst night of my life, I would say.
Are men in Norfolk getting the help they need? What pressures are they facing? And why is their suicide rate higher than the national average? These are all huge questions that have been left unanswered. I'm going to be hearing the stories of those who are close to this issue in an investigation that hopes to get a little bit closer to some of these answers.
I feel that I and others could have saved Leo. Leo could be not sitting in the picture on my desk, but he could be with me. You know, I'll never ever get over
it. The way the suicide rate is recorded in England is representative to every 100,000 people. To put this into perspective, the average national suicide rate in England is 10.1 to every 100,000 people. This is lowered slightly in the east of England to 9.3 to every 100,000, but Norfolk's individual suicide rate is 12.4. I begin this investigation in Norfolk's urban hub, the city of Norwich, where the suicide rate is 20.9 to every 100,000. I started by talking to Dave Thomas. After battling with his mental health, in 2017, Dave found himself walking into the sea at Salthouse Beach in an attempt to end his life. It was only after this triggering experience that Dave sought some help. And as someone who spent years trying to hide his depression, he now encourages others to start talking about how they're feeling. Did you feel like you struggled to open up about your mental health?
Yeah, most definitely. I kept it to myself for probably about 8-9 years, I think, and it was only at the end of December 2017 when I did start to walk into the sea at Salthouse. I think that was a real trigger for me, kind of coming up on the beach, kind of just letting everything go for a bit, and then kind of trying to get back into the routine and not as well. That was where I couldn't really carry on with what was happening as well. But yeah, it took a couple of extreme kind of situations. But once you kind of break the ice and start talking, on reflection, you really wish that you'd done it so much sooner now, to the point where you shout about it and you try and encourage everyone to do it.
Dave began to notice his mental health declining in his 20s when he started to withdraw from his friends and family, and he spoke about how shame and stigma have a large impact on the decline of men's mental health.
I think anyone should embrace any emotion they want to express, to be fair. I think masculinity can make people think, a guy, should a guy be crying? Should he be showing his emotions? Should we be telling kids, don't be such a baby, don't be such a little girl, that kind of stuff. It all kind of breeds into there. I think mine was more to do with shame, to be honest, because having suicidal thoughts, they're intrusive, they're aggressive. You do feel an element of shame and into your head, I remember Cedric Enslin talking, and he said, he'd have 40, 50, 60 thoughts a day of taking his life. And for me, that was like a safe of, it's not just me then, that kind of thing.
I wanted to find out more about how much of an impact not being able to open up is having on the men in our county. So I've come to Trouse in Norwich, where men are gathering to cycle together. But they're not just here for a bit of exercise. This is a cycling group that is dedicated to encouraging men to talk about how they're feeling. The group is run by Nick Little, who is the founder of the 12th Man campaign. The project uses the idea that in football, the fans are so supportive that they are almost like the 12th player on the pitch, and Nick encourages all men to try and show this kind of openness and emotion in their day-to-day life, or in this case, side by side on a bicycle.
The 12th Man campaign aims to get men talking more openly, more often about mental health. It's very much a campaign aimed at the grassroots, the front end of this issue, and we're just trying to create ways that all men can talk more about mental health.
The cycling group not only offers a chance to get some fresh air and to socialise, but it's a safe space where no conversation is off limits. I spoke to a few of the cyclists to ask why they were here and what they got from the group.
Essentially to get guys out doing what they like to do already. So cycling is a big thing amongst a core group of guys, and we essentially get out, we chat, we have a rule which is that we open up, talk about mental health issues if need be. At the same time, guys can just come along and ride as long as they are understanding that the ethos of the group is to celebrate and to remove the stigma of talking about mental health.
I definitely think men should be encouraged to talk about their feelings more and have different ways about being able to talk to other people and not feel like it's a problem to talk about it.
It's okay to accept that both men and women and everyone have feelings, and it's not a sign of weakness to talk about it.
Sat down to talk about what he thinks some of the key issues are relating to Norfolk's high male suicide rate. So why do you think the male suicide rate is so high in Norfolk?
I think there's different kind of levels to this. I think there's a societal issue around men not having the tools to be able to talk about their emotions and their feelings and things like that. And that's probably related to the fact that kind of society discourages that from a young age with young boys and stuff like that. So I think there's two things there. You're not encouraged to do it, and through that means that if you needed to, you don't know how to do that. I think that's very different with the female population. But I think there's definitely something about the way that men in general tend to look at problems as something to be solved, and often when it comes to mental health that a solution is not going to be found very easily. That actually part of that solution is talking through things and maybe saying I don't know what to do, I don't know where this is how I'm feeling and I'm not sure what to do about it.
Do you think that stigma has anything to do with men not being able to open up?
Stigma is the biggest barrier, I would say, and particularly among men. No, people don't want to be seen or labelled, or it's that fear of the consequences. What will it mean if I do this? So because they're so scared of that, they won't talk about it, won't even admit it, and that's where things get to be a problem. I think talking, listening and understanding are a cycle that should, if it works and if we get it right, continue, and each time around that cycle the base kind of level should increase. So if we all talk more about our health, mental health, our emotions, our well-being and those kind of things, we have to then be able to listen. We have to develop our listening skills. But if we're saying everyone needs to talk, we need to back that up by saying we need to make time to listen. Well, if we do those two things, our understanding will improve.
So what I've got from talking to Dave and Nick is that we should really be encouraging men to open up about their feelings. We should be listening more, and we should try and understand more about mental health as well. I really want to dig into this idea of listening, particularly listening without judgment, as this is something that we normally go to our friends and close family for. But people around the UK have increasingly been going to helplines, so I'm now on my way to go and visit a Samaritans volunteer who's local, who's hopefully going to give me a bit more information and tell me about the impact of this. The Samaritans provide a unique service because instead of offering advice or a solution, they are simply there to listen. One of their recent surveys found that 1 in 5 male callers expressed suicidal feelings, and with over 5 million calls for help a year, it suggests that we, as a society, might need to listen more. How important is it that Samaritans listen?
It's just crucial. It is so crucial. So a lot of the time they do ring Samaritans because, as I say, we do listen, and silence and listening is at the centre of our wheel and our organisation. That's how we envision to reduce suicide rates across the country. We find that if you're just silent, they tend to just be more comfortable and then just say what they want to say more, and you get a lot more out of a person if you are silent and if you just listen and not offer advice. People just learn to listen then, and also, you know, as awareness being raised about listening rather than giving advice, I think people will open up a lot more in every day-to-day lives, like in society in general.
I'm beginning to discover that there is not one reason alone as to why the male suicide rate is so high in Norfolk. Research suggests that there are many reasons why a man in Norfolk might see his mental health decline. That could be to do with his occupation, isolation, or rural living, for example. But it actually seems to be that it's not having the tools to cope with these that is leading to so many people taking their own lives. For example, statistics suggest that women are likely to suffer with a mental health issue more often than men. They are also more likely to seek help. Men, on the other hand, are more likely to try and solve their problems through self-medication with alcohol and drugs. They are also more likely to attempt suicide. I wanted to talk to someone who could really put into perspective the impact that suicide is having as we continue to explore this issue. Michael Howard spoke to me about his friend Nick from King's Lynn, who he met when he began university in Norwich. Nick decided to take his life 7 months ago. Do you know if Nick ever attempted to get help, or did he ever open up to any of you or your friends?
Like, there's no indication. He didn't like talking about his mental health issues. That was a thing that Nick never liked. I remember we used to walk into university together a lot, most of the time. And he would say things like, I'd say, how are you? And he would be like, I'm not feeling great. And I'd be like, do you want to talk about it? And he was like, no. I don't need to ask for help. I'm doing all that. I can sort this out myself. I have friends now who I know still really, really struggle with it. And I mean, I struggle with it. We live in like a really solutions-based thing with mental health. Like, do CBT, get therapy, do antidepressants. And like, those sort of things work, I think. In my head, I think they do, but like, yeah, listening is... Because it's something I regret, you know, like, if I look back on... Everyone will say to you in these situations that, like, it's not your fault. You couldn't have done anything. To an extent, that's true. But to an extent also, I could have listened a bit more. Everyone could have. But, like, getting Nick to talk about it was hard, but, like, you know, he would do sometimes, and I would always try and listen.
What is becoming clearer is that there is still a stigma towards men opening up about their mental health. However, 1 in 4 people in the UK will experience a mental health issue this year, no matter their gender, which means it's likely that you'll know one of these people. Despite this, a lot of us still really struggle to listen to someone who's talking about their mental health and not offer advice or try and solve their problems. I want to explore how our services come into this next. Do people who open up get listened to? And are they really supported by our services in Norfolk? I've travelled to Cromer, just one of many towns within Norfolk that feels isolated from the county's mental health services, which predominantly reside in Norwich. North Norfolk has the second highest suicide rate in the county after Norwich, and with a series of recent suicides, the residents of Cromer have been left feeling isolated and let down. Today in North Lodge Park, a Cromer-based campaign group are petitioning to get better services for their community. They're encouraging local residents to talk more about mental health and to try and understand how important it is that everybody in the county is able to access services if they need them. One of the members of this campaign group is Sheila Preston, who has dedicated the last 20 years of her life to improving the mental health services as a governor for the Norfolk-Suffolk NHS Foundation Trust. Her son Leo has schizophrenia and died after taking his own life 3 years ago at the age of 38. Sheila spoke to me about how badly she feels the trust is managed, especially after a redesign of the services in 2013, which included financial savings being made. While she said that individual nurses and staff were great, it seems we are now living in a county where there is a clear disparity in services, and many would like to see immediate improvements.
My son died. I think he died through neglect and all sorts of things that could have been different. You know, my son should not be dead. The service change, the change of, disintegrating certain community teams, he just went, he might have survived. When people are in crisis, they need immediate services, they need immediately to be put somewhere safe and to be brought back to that equilibrium, their own equilibrium, and it's just not happening. I think it's a national disgrace.
We had a look at some of Leo's old diaries. Entries were made just days before he died, a tough reminder of the day-to-day struggles that he faced.
He says he wished he hadn't let people in, and wished they'd go away. I can hardly bear to read it, but I must one day. I really must, because I owe it to him.
Our mental health services in Norfolk and Suffolk are the only of its kind to be in special measures, and people from Norfolk are being sent as far as Bristol and Yorkshire for treatment. I wanted to spend the last leg of this investigation finding out what is being done or what should be done to get men suffering with mental illness the help they need to hopefully prevent suicide. What would you like to see improved to hopefully ensure that there will be less suicides in North Norfolk and across the rest of the county?
If we could reduce the average length of stay in a hospital bed, you can free up money to provide much better support in the community, to prevent people from going into crisis in the first place, therefore prevent people having to go into hospital in the first place, and reduce the risk of people taking their own lives. Particularly, it's not just making a big, bold statement that we commit to zero suicide, it's then applying the evidence of what we know works, such as providing early support to people with chronic conditions to support their psychological needs. But we need more investment from the government, but also we need to spend the money more effectively.
I think one of the things which we really do struggle with is when men are in crisis, okay, and it's about what one of our understandings of what when men are in crisis and they ask for help is they want it then and they want it now, and it's about coming up with services which are actually responsive enough to be able to manage that. So once a man's come over the threshold, asked for help, he doesn't really want to then be traditionally referred to a service and then wait perhaps 4 weeks for a response and stuff. Whether or not his problem is extremely severe or mild, we know that they're wanting it now. So that's one of the things which we are looking at, is actually how we respond to men and women in crisis, and children in crisis as well.
Us as a trust, as an organisation, have work to do to improve the quality of our services, and that's something that we're actively doing through some improvement work, so that we are continually looking to make the best and effective way for our service users in the community.
What has become clear is that we are, as a society, getting better at encouraging men to open up. There is still an underlying stigma that is stopping many. And despite improvements to our services, it feels like there is still a long way to go before people feel completely supported by our mental health trust. This investigation really is the tip of the iceberg. There are several statistics that correlate with the high male suicide rate in Norfolk, and that includes deprivation, unemployment, occupation, chronic illness, and more. What I hope to have highlighted in this documentary is that if we can just raise a small amount of awareness to encourage people to open up, to really listen, and to try and understand mental health, then we might be able to help men to cope with everyday crises and disturbances. And then we can hope to work towards a future where we are a zero suicide county.
Be a man. Be a leader. Be a follower. Be a game changer. Be a reader. Be a writer. Be a real freedom fighter. Be a teacher, learner, grafter or earner. Be a manager, worker, cleaner or customer. Be a butcher, baker, be any kind of maker. Be a sketcher, a sculptor, be a crafter, a creator, be a helper, a fixer, repairer, inventor. Be a plumber, builder, paint and decorator. Be a fetcher, a carrier, a lifter, a loader. Be a player, supporter, a fanatical adorer. Be a driver or a barber. Be a runner and a rider. Be a talker. Be a listener. Be a friend. Be a man. Be the 12th man. Let's talk about mental health.